3 months ago, a dangerous Korean crime boss saw me dancing in a Miami club and made one phone call to clear my schedule so I'd have dinner with him. I should have said no to Tahun, should have run from the way his voice shook when he begged me to say yes. But I fell in love with a man who owns half the underworld instead. Now I'm waking up tied to a chair in a pitch-black warehouse because his rivals discovered I'm his weakness, and I can hear gunfire exploding closer and closer as he tears through this building to reach me. The door blasts open and he's standing there drenched in blood with feral eyes, and when he cuts me free and crushes me to his chest, growling, "I've got you. You're safe. You're mine." I realise I'd choose this dangerous man 1,000 times over, even if it kills me. The bass pounded through the speakers like a heartbeat, shaking the crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling of Club Velvet in Miami. Nadia stepped onto the stage at exactly 1 a.m., her dark skin glowing under the purple and blue lights. She wore a short black dress that hugged every curve of her body, and when she started moving to the music, it was like watching art come alive. Her hips swayed side to side in a rhythm that made everyone in the club stop talking and stare. She closed her eyes and let the music control her, her long braids swinging as she spun around. Nadia wasn't just dancing. She was telling a story with her body, and every man in that room wished he was part of that story. In the darkest corner of the VIP section, Tahun sat perfectly still in his black suit. His 3 bodyguards stood behind him like statues, but he didn't need them right now. All his attention was locked on the woman moving on that stage. He had come to this club 100 times before and never felt anything. Women danced. He watched with bored eyes, and then he left to handle his business. But this woman was different. Tahun leaned forward in his leather chair, his jaw tight. The way she moved made something wake up inside his chest, something he thought had died years ago. Her confidence radiated off her like heat, and when she opened her eyes and looked directly at him across the crowded room, he felt it in his entire body. Their eyes met for 3 seconds that felt like forever. Nadia's breath caught in her throat. She had performed for thousands of people, but this man's stare felt different, dangerous, hungry. His face was all sharp angles and smooth skin, his dark hair pushed back perfectly. Even sitting down, she could tell he was important. The way everyone gave his corner extra space, the expensive watch on his wrist catching the light, the cold power in his eyes that suddenly burned hot when he looked at her. She forced herself to look away and continue dancing, but her heart was racing now. Tahun turned his head slightly without breaking his stare. "Bring her to me," he said in a low voice to Minjun, his right hand. Man. Minjun nodded once. He had worked for Tahun for 8 years and had never heard that tone in his boss's voice before. This was not a request. This was a need. When Nadia's performance ended, the crowd clapped and cheered. She bowed gracefully, feeling sweat slide down her back. As she walked off stage toward the dressing rooms, a tall man in a grey suit stepped in front of her. "Excuse me, miss," Minjun said politely. "My employer would like to speak with you." Nadia looked past him to the VIP corner. The handsome stranger was still watching her, and now he lifted his glass of whiskey in a small salute. Her stomach flipped. "Who is your employer?" she asked, even though something told her she didn't want to know the answer. "Someone who doesn't like to wait," Minjun replied with a small smile. "Please, just 5 minutes of your time." Nadia knew she should say no. Every smart part of her brain screamed to walk away, but her feet started moving toward that dark corner anyway, and she couldn't stop them. As she got closer, Tahun stood up. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out his suit perfectly. Up close, he was even more handsome. His eyes were dark brown, almost black, and they traced over her face like he was memorizing every detail. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. His voice was deep and smooth, with just a hint of an accent. Nadia sat down, very aware of how short her dress was. She crossed her legs and tried to look confident, even though her pulse was hammering. "You wanted to see me. I wanted to know your name," Tahun said, sitting back down, but never taking his eyes off her. "I've been coming to this club for 2 years. I've never seen you before. I just started 3 weeks ago. I'm Nadia." "Nadia," he said her name slowly, tasting it. "I'm Tahun. Where did you learn to move like that?" "Back home in Nigeria, then here in dance school." She tilted her head, studying him. "Where did you learn to stare at women like you own them?" Minjun tensed behind Tahun, but Tahun laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and surprised. "I like you already. You're not afraid of me." "Should I be?" His smile faded a little. "Probably." He leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "But I hope you won't be. Tell me something, Nadia. Do you feel it too?" "Feel what?" she whispered, even though she knew exactly what he meant. "This." Tahun reached across the table and touched her hand with one finger, dragging it slowly across her knuckles. That single touch sent electricity shooting up her arm. This thing that started the second our eyes met. Nadia pulled her hand back, but not because she wanted to, because she had to. "I don't even know you." "Then let me fix that. Have dinner with me tomorrow night." "I work tomorrow night." "Not anymore." Tahun pulled out his phone and made a call without breaking eye contact with her. "Yes, this is Tahun. Park. I'm calling about one of your dancers, Nadia. She won't be working tomorrow, or any night I want to see her." He paused, listening. "Good. We understand each other." He hung up and put his phone away like he hadn't just changed her schedule without asking. Nadia should have been angry. She should have thrown her drink in his face and stormed out, but instead, she felt a thrill run through her body. "You can't just do that." "I can do anything I want," Tahun said softly. But I won't force you to have dinner with me. That choice is yours. Say yes, Nadia." The way he said her name made her skin tingle. She looked into his eyes and saw something that shocked her. Under all that confidence and power, he was nervous. This dangerous man was actually nervous about whether she would say yes. "One dinner," she heard herself say, "but somewhere public." Tahun's smile could have melted ice. "Anywhere you want. Give Minjun your address. I'll pick you up at 8. Nadia stood up on shaky legs. She was about to walk away when Tahun caught her wrist gently. He stood up and moved closer, so close she could smell his expensive cologne and feel the heat from his body. "I need you to know something before tomorrow," he said quietly, his lips almost touching her ear. "From the moment I saw you dancing, something in my life changed. I don't know what this is yet, but I'm going to find out, and I think you want to find out too." His breath on her neck made her knees weak. Nadia turned her head slightly, and suddenly their faces were inches apart. She could kiss him right now if she wanted to. She could feel that he wanted her to. "You're very sure of yourself," she whispered. "I have to be in my world." His eyes dropped to her lips. "But with you, I'm not sure of anything. That's why I can't let you walk away." "You don't own me, Tahun." "Not yet," he said with a dangerous smile. "But give me time." Nadia pulled away before she did something crazy like kiss a stranger in the middle of a nightclub. She walked towards the dressing room on trembling legs, feeling his eyes burning into her back the entire way. When she finally got to the private room and closed the door, she leaned against it and touched her wrist where his fingers had been. Her skin still felt warm there. What had just happened? Who was this man who could call her boss and change her schedule with one phone call? Why did every instinct tell her he was dangerous, but every part of her body wanted to see him again. Nadia looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were bright, her cheeks flushed. She looked like a woman who had just been woken up from a long sleep. Tomorrow night at 8, her life was going to change. She could feel it in her bones. Back in the VIP section, Min-Jun approached Tahun carefully. "Boss, we have that meeting with the Russians in the morning." "Cancel it," Tahun said, still staring at the door Nadia had disappeared through. "But, boss, they flew in from Moscow specifically to see you." Tahun finally looked at his assistant. "I said cancel it. Reschedule for next week. Tomorrow, I have something more important to do." Min-Jun had never seen that look in his boss's eyes before. It scared him a little. "Yes, boss. Right away." Min-Jun pulled out his phone, already knowing this woman had just become the most important person in Tahun's world. And in their world, that meant she had just become the most dangerous target in Miami. Nadia changed her outfit 4 times before Tahun arrived. She finally chose a dark red dress that fell just above her knees, elegant but not too formal. Her hands shook as she applied her lipstick, and she kept checking the clock. 7:58, 7:59, 8 o'clock. The doorbell rang. She took a deep breath and opened the door. Tahun stood there in dark jeans and a crisp white shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked somehow more dangerous dressed casually than he had in his expensive suit. His eyes travelled slowly from her face, down to her heels, and back up again. "You look incredible," he said, his voice rough. "Thank you. You look different without the suit." "Good, different, or bad, different?" He stepped closer, and she could smell that intoxicating cologne again. "I haven't decided yet." Nadia grabbed her purse and locked her apartment door, trying to ignore how her heart was racing. Tahun's car was sleek and black, the kind that probably cost more than her apartment building. He opened the passenger door for her, and his hand brushed against her lower back as she slid into the leather seat. That small touch made her entire body aware of him. He drove them to a restaurant on South Beach, right on the ocean. The host's eyes went wide when he saw Tahun, and suddenly they had the best table on the outdoor patio, away from everyone else. Candles flickered on their table, and the sound of waves filled the warm night air. "Do you always get exactly what you want?" Nadia asked as they sat down. Tahun smiled. "Usually, but the things I want most are never easy." He looked at her in a way that made it clear she was one of those things. They ordered food, but Nadia barely tasted what she ate. They talked about everything. She told him about growing up in Lagos, how her mother taught her to dance before she could walk, how she came to America 5 years ago chasing a dream. He told her about being raised between Seoul and Los Angeles, how his father expected him to take over the family business, how he never felt like he belonged anywhere. "What kind of business does your family do?" Nadia asked, even though part of her didn't want to know. Tahun was quiet for a moment, his jaw tight. "Import and export. We move valuable things from one place to another." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. "What about you? Why dancing?" "Because when I dance, I don't have to think. I just feel. Everything else in life is so complicated, but dancing is pure. It's honest." She looked out at the dark ocean. "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." Tahun reached across the table and took her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. His thumb traced circles on her palm, and the simple touch made her stomach flutter. "I've built my whole life on thinking, strategy, control. But when I saw you last night, I didn't think. I just wanted." "Wanted what?" Nadia asked, even though the heat in his eyes already told her the answer. "You. All of you." His fingers tightened around hers. "I know this is fast. I know we just met. but I've never felt anything like this before, and I'm not going to pretend I don't. Nadia's throat felt dry. Tahun, I don't do fast. I don't jump into things without knowing what they are. Then, let me show you what this is. He stood up and pulled her gently to her feet. Dance with me. There was no music playing except the distant sound from inside the restaurant, but Tahun pulled her close anyway. One hand went to her waist, the other held her hand against his chest. They swayed slowly, and Nadia could feel his heart beating fast under her palm. See, sometimes you have to stop thinking, he whispered near her ear. Sometimes you just have to feel. Nadia let herself relax against him. He was solid and warm, and the way he held her made her feel safe and wanted at the same time. She could feel his breath on her neck, and when she tilted her head up to look at him, his face was right there. I'm going to kiss you now, Tahun said softly. If you don't want me to, tell me to stop. She didn't tell him to stop. His lips touched hers gently at first, testing, asking permission. When she kissed him back, he made a low sound in his throat and pulled her closer. The kiss deepened, his hand sliding up her back to tangle in her hair. Nadia forgot they were on a restaurant patio. She forgot everything except the taste of him and the way his body felt pressed against hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tahun rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me tonight. I barely know you, Nadia whispered, but her body was already saying yes. You know enough. You know this is real. You feel it just like I do. He kissed her again, slower this time, more deliberate. I promise I'll take care of you. Just trust me for tonight. Nadia knew this was crazy. She knew she should say no and go home to her safe apartment alone. But when she looked into his eyes and saw the raw need there, she couldn't lie to herself anymore. She wanted this too. Okay, she breathed, just for tonight. The drive to his mansion in Coral Gables felt like it took forever. Tahun kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other on her thigh, his fingers drawing patterns on her skin that made concentration impossible. Every red light, he would lean over and kiss her neck, her jaw, her lips. By the time they pulled through his security gate, Nadia was practically shaking with want. His house was massive and modern, all glass and clean lines. But Nadia barely saw any of it, because the moment they were inside with the door closed, Tahun pinned her against the wall and kissed her like he was starving. God, you're so beautiful, he groaned against her mouth. His hands roamed over her body, learning her curves through the thin fabric of her dress. I've thought about this all day, all night since I met you. Me too, Nadia admitted, her fingers working on the buttons of his shirt. She needed to feel his skin, needed to know if his body was as perfect as it looked. It was. Tahun shrugged out of his shirt, and Nadia's breath caught. His chest was toned and smooth, with just a hint of muscle definition that made her mouth go dry. She ran her hands over his shoulders, his chest, his stomach, and felt him shiver under her touch. Bedroom, he said roughly, taking her hand and leading her up the stairs. His bedroom was huge, dominated by a massive bed with dark sheets. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the lights of Miami in the distance, but Tahun closed the curtains and turned on a single lamp that cast everything in soft shadows. He walked back to her slowly, like he was giving her time to change her mind. We can stop any time you want. Just say the word. But Nadia didn't want to stop. She reached behind her back and slowly unzipped her dress, letting it fall to the floor. She stood there in just her underwear, feeling more exposed than she ever had on stage, but also more powerful. The way Tahun looked at her made her feel like a goddess. You're perfect, he whispered, closing the distance between them. Absolutely perfect. He kissed her again as his hands explored her body, touching her in ways that made her gasp and arch against him. They fell onto the bed together, and Tahun took his time, kissing every inch of her skin, learning what made her moan, what made her grab his hair and pull him closer. When he finally moved over her, he paused and looked into her eyes. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Nadia said, pulling him down. "I'm sure." They moved together slowly at first, finding their rhythm. Tahun was gentle but intense, his eyes never leaving her face. He whispered things in Korean that she didn't understand, but that sounded like prayers. Nadia wrapped her legs around him and let herself get lost in the sensation, in the feeling of being completely connected to another person. When it was over, they lay tangled in his sheets, both breathing hard. Tahun pulled her against his chest and kissed her forehead. "Stay tonight," he said. "Don't leave." "I wasn't planning to," Nadia admitted, tracing patterns on his chest with her finger. They talked for hours in the darkness, sharing secrets and dreams. Tahun told her about losing his mother when he was young, about the pressure of being his father's only son. Nadia told him about leaving everything familiar to come to a country where she knew nobody, about the loneliness that came with chasing dreams. "I'm not lonely anymore," Tahun said, tilting her face up to kiss her again. "Not with you here." They made love again, slower this time, savouring every touch and kiss. Afterwards, as Nadia drifted off to sleep in his arms, she felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just physical attraction. This was the beginning of something bigger, something that scared her as much as it thrilled her. Tahun stayed awake long after she fell asleep, watching her breathe, stroking her hair. He had never brought a woman to his home before. He had never let anyone this close. But with Nadia, all his carefully built walls had crumbled in just 2 days. He kissed her shoulder gently and whispered into her sleeping form, "I'm keeping you. I don't care what it takes. You're mine now." Outside, Miami slept. Inside, 2 people who had been strangers 48 hours ago had found something neither knew they were looking for, and nothing would ever be the same again. Nadia woke up, wrapped in sheets that smelled like expensive detergent and Tahun's cologne. Sunlight streamed through a crack in the curtains, and for a moment she forgot where she was. Then she felt the warm body next to her and remembered everything. She turned her head and found Tahun already awake, watching her with soft eyes. His hair was messy from sleep, and he looked younger somehow, less dangerous. "Good morning," he said, his voice rough and deep. "Good morning." Nadia suddenly felt shy, very aware that she was naked under these sheets in a stranger's bed, except he didn't feel like a stranger anymore. Tahun reached out and traced her cheekbone with his thumb. "I'm making you breakfast. Don't leave." He kissed her once, slow and sweet, then got out of bed. Nadia watched him pull on sweatpants, admiring the muscles in his back. He caught her looking and grinned before disappearing out the door. She took a quick shower in his massive bathroom, smiling at how many expensive products lined the shelves. She found one of his shirts and put it on, the fabric falling to mid-thigh. When she walked downstairs, following the smell of coffee, she found him in the kitchen cooking eggs and bacon. "That shirt looks better on you than it ever did on me," Tahun said, pulling her close for another kiss. They ate breakfast on his back patio, overlooking a pool that sparkled in the morning sun. It felt strangely domestic, like they had done this 100 times before. Tahun kept touching her, little gestures like brushing her hair behind her ear or holding her hand across the table like he needed to keep making sure she was real. For 2 weeks, Nadia lived in a beautiful dream. Tahun took her everywhere. They had dinner at the fanciest restaurants in Miami Beach, went dancing at clubs where everyone seemed to know and fear him, took midnight drives with the windows down and music blasting. He bought her gifts that she protested but secretly loved: dresses, jewellery, flowers delivered to her apartment every morning. But more than the gifts, she loved how he looked at her, like she was the only person in the world that mattered. He would cancel important meetings just to have lunch with her. He learned her favourite foods and always ordered them without asking. He held her hand in public, not caring who saw. At night, they would end up at his mansion, unable to keep their hands off each other. Their passion only grew stronger. Sometimes it was fast and desperate, pulling at each other's clothes before they even made it to the bedroom. Other times it was slow and deep, exploring each other for hours until they were both exhausted and satisfied. Nadia had never felt this way about anyone. She was falling in love with him, and it terrified her because there were things about Tahun that didn't add up. The way people moved out of his way when they walked down the street, the phone calls he would take in another room, speaking harsh Korean that sounded like orders, the men who followed them everywhere, always watching. On their 15th day together, Tahun picked her up and drove her to his mansion like always. But this time, his jaw was tight and his eyes looked troubled. "What's wrong?" Nadia asked as they walked inside. "Sit down. We need to talk." His voice was serious in a way she had never heard before. Fear gripped her chest. "Are you breaking up with me?" "What?" "No." Tahun pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "Never. But I need to tell you something, and you might want to leave after you hear it." They sat on his couch, and he held both her hands in his. He looked at her for a long moment, like he was memorizing her face in case this was the last time. "My family doesn't just do import and export," he started. "We run an organization, a powerful one. We control territory, we make deals that aren't always legal, and we have enemies who would kill to take what we have." Nadia's mouth went dry. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm not a good man, Nadia. I've done things that would make you run away from me. I've hurt people who crossed me. I've built an empire on fear and loyalty." He squeezed her hands tighter. "But with you, I'm different. You make me want to be better. You make me feel things I thought I had buried years ago." She tried to pull her hands away, but he held on. "So you're telling me you're a criminal? That everything you have comes from illegal business?" "Yes." He didn't flinch from the truth. "I'm the head of the Korean syndicate in South Florida. People fear me because I've earned that fear. But I'm also telling you that I will never let that world touch you. I will protect you with everything I have." Nadia stood up, her mind racing. This explained everything. The power, the money, the fear in people's eyes. She thought about all the romantic movies she had watched where the girl falls for the dangerous man, and it ends badly. She thought about her mother back in Nigeria, who would be horrified, but then she thought about how Tahun held her when she cried about missing home, how he listened to her dreams about opening a dance school and took them seriously, how he made her feel cherished and safe and alive. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked. Tahun stood and walked to her. "Because I'm in love with you. I know it's fast, but I've never been more sure of anything. And I can't keep lying to you, even if it means losing you. You deserve to know who I really am." "You love me." Nadia's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. "Yes, I'm completely in love with you." He cupped her face in his hands. "I love how you dance like nobody's watching. I love how you laugh at my terrible jokes. I love waking up next to you and falling asleep with you in my arms. I love everything about you, and I need you to know the truth before this goes any further." Tears filled Nadia's eyes. "This is crazy. I should leave. I should run as far from you as possible. I know." His voice cracked. "But please don't. Please give me a chance to show you that what we have is real, no matter what I do in my other life." Nadia looked into his eyes and saw genuine fear there. This powerful man who scared everyone was terrified of losing her, and she realized something that shocked her. She was in love with him too, completely, deeply, terrifyingly in love. "I need time to think," she whispered. "Take all the time you need. I'll wait." Tahun kissed her forehead gently. "But before you go, I need you to understand something. My enemies can't know about you. If they find out you matter to me, you become a target. That's why I have men watching you, protecting you. I know it seems controlling, but it's the only way to keep you safe. So I'm in danger just because I met you." The reality of it hit her hard. "You're in danger because I fell in love with you, and I'm sorry for that, but I promise you nobody will ever hurt you. I would burn this entire city down before I let anyone touch you." The intensity in his voice made her believe him. Nadia touched his face, feeling the stubble on his jaw. "Give me tonight to think. I'll call you tomorrow." "Okay." He looked like it physically pained him to let her go, but he walked her to his car and had Min Jun drive her home. That night, Nadia lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her logical mind told her to run. Dating a criminal was insane. It was dangerous. It could destroy her life. But her heart remembered how safe she felt in his arms, how alive he made her feel, how he looked at her like she was precious, how he told her he loved her with such raw honesty that she couldn't doubt it was real. At 2 a.m, she made her decision. She grabbed her phone and called him. "Nadia?" Tahun answered on the first ring. He sounded like he hadn't slept at all. "I'm coming over. Don't send a car. I'm driving myself. It's not safe for you to drive alone at night. Let me send Min Jun." "Tahun, if we're doing this, you need to trust that I can take care of myself. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up and got dressed quickly, her heart racing with nervousness and excitement. When she pulled up to his gate 20 minutes later, it opened immediately. Tahun was waiting at the front door, still in the same clothes from earlier. Nadia got out of her car and walked up to him. Without saying a word, she grabbed his face and kissed him hard. He made a surprised sound and then wrapped his arms around her, lifting her off the ground. "Does this mean what I think it means?" he asked against her lips. "It means I'm staying. It means I'm choosing you, even though it's crazy. It means I love you too." She pulled back to look at him. "But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll always be honest with me, no more secrets, and promise me you'll try to be safe, because I can't lose you now that I've found you." "I promise." Tahun kissed her again, deeper this time. "I promise I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice." He carried her inside and up to his bedroom, laying her gently on the bed. They made love with a new intensity, knowing now that this wasn't just physical. This was love, real and complicated and dangerous, but more powerful than anything either of them had felt before. Afterwards, wrapped in his arms with her head on his chest, Nadia whispered, "No turning back now." "No turning back," Tahun agreed, holding her tighter. "You're mine forever." 3 months passed like a beautiful dream that Nadia never wanted to end. She moved into Tahun's mansion officially, bringing her small collection of belongings that looked tiny in his huge closet. He cleared out half of everything to make space for her, and the gesture touched her more than any expensive gift ever could. Their mornings became a sacred ritual. Tahun would wake her with soft kisses along her shoulder, and they would make love slowly as sunlight filtered through the curtains. Afterwards, he would cook breakfast, while she danced around the kitchen in nothing but his shirt, making him laugh in a way that Min Jun said he had never heard before. "Teach me." Tahun said one morning as she moved her hips to music playing from her phone. Teach you what? Nadia spun around, her braids flying. How to dance like that, like you don't care what anyone thinks. He walked over and pulled her close, his hands on her waist. It's not about not caring, it's about feeling the music in your soul. She placed his hands on her hips and started moving against him. Feel the rhythm. Let your body follow mine. They danced in the kitchen, and Tahun was terrible at first, too stiff and controlled. But Nadia was patient, showing him how to loosen up, how to move with the beat instead of against it. When he finally got it, when his body relaxed and moved with hers, she rewarded him with a deep kiss that led to them forgetting about breakfast entirely and ending up back in bed. At night, Tahun taught her Korean words while they lay tangled in sheets. He would trace her skin with his finger and whisper phrases in his native language. "Sarangi," he would say, kissing her neck. "What does that mean?" Nadia asked, shivering at his touch. "It means, I love you." He moved his lips to her collarbone. "Neomu yepuda, you're so beautiful." "Saranghae," Nadia repeated carefully, and the joy on his face made her heart swell. He taught her other words too, Jagi, which meant sweetheart, Bogo Shipda, which meant I miss you, and phrases that made him grin wickedly because they were too inappropriate to translate. But the way he touched her when he said them made their meaning clear enough. On weekends, they would escape Miami entirely. Tahun had contacts everywhere, people who owed him favours, and he used them to create perfect getaways where nobody knew who he was. They spent a long weekend in New Orleans, walking through the French Quarter hand in hand like regular tourists. They ate beignets and listened to street musicians, and one night they danced to jazz music in a tiny club where everyone was too drunk to recognise the dangerous man in their midst. In their hotel room that night, Tahun pressed Nadia against the balcony door, the sounds of Bourbon Street floating up to them. He kissed her deeply while his hands roamed under her dress. "I love you like this," he murmured against her lips. "Free, happy, mine. I am yours," Nadia gasped as his fingers found sensitive places that made her knees weak. "All yours." They made love right there against the glass door, both too desperate for each other to make it to the bed. Afterwards, Tahun carried her to the shower where they went another round under the hot water, his hands sliding over her wet skin while she wrapped her legs around him. Their physical connection only grew stronger as the months passed. Tahun learned exactly what Nadia liked, what made her moan his name, what made her grab the sheets and arch her back. Sometimes their passion was wild and urgent, clothes torn off in the hallway because they couldn't wait another second. Other times it was slow and tender, hours of kissing and touching until they were both trembling with need. "You've ruined me for anyone else," Tahun told her one night, his body still covering hers as they both caught their breath. "I could never want anyone but you." "Good," Nadia whispered, running her fingers through his damp hair, "because I'm not sharing you with anyone." But their perfect bubble couldn't last forever. Tahun still had his other life, the dangerous one he tried to keep separate from what they had. He would get phone, calls that made his expression go cold and hard. He would leave for meetings that lasted hours, and Nadia learned not to ask too many questions about where he went or what he did. She quit her job at Club Velvet without argument when Tahun asked her to. He didn't want her dancing for other men anymore, and secretly, she didn't either. Dancing had been her escape when she was lonely, but now she had everything she needed right here. "What do you want to do with your life?" Tahun asked her one lazy afternoon while they lounged by the pool. He was trailing his fingers up and down her arm, making patterns on her skin. "I told you before, I want to open a dance school. Teach kids who can't afford expensive lessons. Nadia rolled over to look at him. Why? Because I want to make that happen for you. He kissed her shoulder. I'm having my people look at properties. Somewhere in a good neighbourhood where families feel safe bringing their children. Tahun, that's too much. A whole building costs a fortune. I have a fortune. Let me spend it on making you happy. He pulled her on top of him, his hands settling on her waist. Besides, I like the idea of you teaching dance. It's honest work, pure, like you said that first night. It'll balance out all the dirty things I do. Nadia leaned down and kissed him softly. You're not as bad as you think you are. Yes, I am. His expression darkened for a moment. But I'm trying to be better for you. She kissed him again, deeper this time, and soon they were making love on the pool lounger with the Miami sun beating down on their skin. Nadia had never felt so free, so completely herself as she did with this complicated man who loved her fiercely. But danger was creeping closer, even though neither of them saw it yet. Minho Volkov ran the Russian operations in Miami, and he had been watching Tahun for months, looking for weakness. The Koreans controlled the port, which meant they controlled what came in and out of the city. Minho wanted that control for himself. He noticed that Tahun had become distracted lately. The sharp, ruthless leader who never made mistakes was suddenly leaving meetings early and smiling at his phone. Minho had his men follow Tahun, and that's when they discovered Nadia, the beautiful African woman who had somehow captured the heart of the man who supposedly had no heart. Minho watched footage of them together, saw how Tahun looked at her, how he touched her constantly, like he couldn't help himself. And Minho smiled because he had just found exactly what he needed. Back at the mansion, Nadia was completely unaware of the danger. She was in the kitchen trying to cook a Nigerian dish called jollof rice to surprise Tahun. She had called her mother for the recipe, carefully leaving out the part about living with a man, especially a man like Tahun. When he came home that evening, he found her dancing to Afrobeat music while stirring a pot on the stove. He leaned against the doorway, watching her, his expression soft. Something smells amazing, he said. Nadia jumped and turned around, her hand on her chest. You're early. This was supposed to be a surprise. I couldn't stay away. Tahun walked over and wrapped his arms around her from behind, kissing her neck. I kept thinking about coming home to you. Taste this. She held up a spoon of rice. Tell me if it's good. He tasted it and made an appreciative sound. It's perfect, like you. Flatterer. But she was smiling as she turned in his arms to kiss him properly. They ate dinner on the patio as the sun set, and Tahun told her funny stories about Min-jun accidentally insulting a Japanese businessman by using the wrong honorific. Nadia laughed until her stomach hurt, and she thought about how this was her life now. This beautiful, strange, perfect life with a man who was dangerous to everyone except her. That night in bed, Tahun made love to her with an intensity that surprised her. He held her tighter than usual, kissed her deeper, whispered her name like a prayer. When it was over and they lay wrapped around each other, Nadia felt him tense. What's wrong? She asked, tracing circles on his chest. Nothing. I just love you so much it scares me sometimes. He kissed the top of her head. The thought of anything happening to you, of losing you, it makes me feel things I've never felt before. Nothing's going to happen to me. You have an army of men making sure I'm safe. Nadia tilted her face up to look at him. I'm not going anywhere. Promise me something, Tahun said seriously. If anything ever feels wrong, if you ever feel like you're being watched or followed, you call me immediately. You don't wait. You don't think you're being paranoid. You call me. Okay, I promise. She kissed his jaw. But you're worrying over nothing. Everything's fine. Tahun held her closer and said nothing. He had learned to trust his instincts over the years, and right now, his instincts were screaming that something bad was coming. He just didn't know what yet. Outside their window, Miami sparkled with lights. Somewhere in the city, Minho was planning his next move, and in 3 days, everything would change. The morning started like any other. Tahun kissed Nadia goodbye before heading to a business meeting, his lips lingering on hers like he didn't want to leave. "I'll be back by lunch," he promised, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. "Then we can spend the afternoon doing nothing." "Nothing sounds perfect," Nadia smiled, pulling him down for one more kiss. "Be safe, always." He squeezed her hand and left, Min-jun and 2 other guards following behind him. Nadia spent the morning cleaning up the kitchen and dancing to music. Around 11, she realized they were out of coffee, Tahun's one requirement for a good morning. She decided to run to the store downtown to surprise him with his favorite blend. She texted Min-jun that she was going out, grabbed her purse and drove her car through the security gate. The store was only 15 minutes away, and the day was beautiful. She didn't notice the black van that pulled out behind her and followed at a distance. Nadia parked on a busy street and walked into the specialty coffee shop. She was reading labels, trying to remember which blend Tahun liked best, when someone came up behind her. "Excuse me, miss," a voice, with a thick Russian accent said. "You drop this." She turned around to say he was mistaken, and that's when she felt the sharp prick in her neck. Her vision blurred immediately. Strong hands caught her as her legs gave out, and the last thing she heard was someone saying, "The boss will be pleased." When Nadia woke up, her head was pounding and her mouth tasted like metal. She was in a dark room that smelled like oil and rust. Her hands were tied to a chair, and fear crashed over her in waves. She tried to scream, but her throat was too dry. A door opened, letting in harsh light that made her eyes water. A tall man with blonde hair and cold blue eyes walked in, followed by 2 larger men who looked like they spent their lives in gyms. "Finally awake," the blonde man said in accented English. "I was beginning to worry we gave you too much. I'm Minho Volkov. You're Nadia, the woman who has made Tahun Park soft." "Let me go," Nadia said, trying to sound brave even though her heart was racing. "You don't know what you're doing. He'll kill you for this." Minho laughed. "That's exactly what I'm counting on. You see, your boyfriend has something I want. The port operations, the shipping routes, all of it. And he won't give them to me because he thinks he's untouchable." He crouched down in front of her. "But every man has a weakness. You're his. He won't negotiate with you. He'll just come for me." Nadia lifted her chin, refusing to show how terrified she was. "Oh, I hope he does. I hope he comes angry and stupid and emotional, because that's when I'll destroy him." Minho stood up and walked towards the door. "Make yourself comfortable. You'll be here a while." The door closed, leaving her in darkness. Nadia pulled against the ropes until her wrists were raw, but they wouldn't budge. Tears streamed down her face as she thought about Tahun finding out what happened. She had promised him she would be careful. She had promised she would call if anything felt wrong. 2 days passed in that warehouse. They gave her water, but barely any food. She lost track of time in the darkness. Sometimes she would hear gunfire in the distance and hope it was Tahun coming for her. Other times she would cry until she had no tears left. Meanwhile, Tahun was tearing Miami apart. The moment he got Min-jun's panicked call that Nadia hadn't responded to texts and her car was found abandoned outside a coffee shop, something inside him broke. The security footage showed everything: the van, the men, the way they carried her unconscious body. "Find her!" Tahun said in a voice so cold that even his most loyal men flinched. Burn every Russian property to the ground until someone tells us where Minho is keeping her. For 2 days, he became the monster everyone feared. He didn't sleep, didn't eat. He interrogated Russian associates personally, and the things he did to get information would haunt him forever. But he didn't care. Every minute Nadia was gone was a minute she could be hurt or scared, or worse. Min-jun had never seen his boss like this. Tae-hoon's eyes were wild, his hands shaking when he wasn't hurting someone. Boss, you need to rest. We'll find her. I can't rest while she's out there. Tae-hoon growled. She's scared, Min-jun. She's alone and scared, and it's my fault. I brought her into this world. I made her a target. On the 3rd day, one of Minho's men finally broke and gave them the location, an old warehouse near the port. Tae-hoon grabbed every weapon he could carry and headed out with 20 of his best fighters. The warehouse was guarded, but not well enough. Tae-hoon's men moved through them like shadows. He personally put a bullet in anyone who stood between him and that building. When he finally kicked open the door to the room where Nadia was being held, his heart stopped. She was tied to a chair, her face pale and streaked with tears. Her clothes were dirty, and her wrists were bleeding from fighting the ropes. But when she saw him, her face transformed with relief and joy. "Tae-hoon!" she sobbed. He was across the room in seconds, cutting the ropes with his knife and pulling her into his arms. She collapsed against him, her whole body shaking. "I've got you. You're safe now. I've got you. I was so scared," Nadia cried into his chest. "I thought I would never see you again." "Never. I will always find you. Always." Tae-hoon kissed her hair, her face, her lips, needing to feel that she was real and alive. "Can you walk?" "I think so." He helped her stand, but her legs were weak from sitting for so long. Tae-hoon simply picked her up and carried her out of that warehouse. Behind them, gunfire erupted as his men finished dealing with Minho's guards. In the car, Nadia couldn't stop shaking. Tae-hoon held her on his lap, wrapped in his jacket, whispering apologies and promises in Korean and English. "Where's Minho?" she asked quietly. "Gone for now, but I'll find him. I'll make him pay for every second you were scared." The rage in his voice was barely contained. "I just want to go home. Please, just take me home." Back at the mansion, Tae-hoon carried her straight to the bathroom and started filling the tub with warm water. He undressed her gently, his jaw clenched when he saw the bruises on her wrists and arms. He undressed himself and got in the tub behind her, pulling her back against his chest. They sat in silence while he washed her hair and cleaned the dirt from her skin. Nadia cried quietly, and Tae-hoon held her tighter, his own tears falling into her wet hair. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I should have protected you better." "It's not your fault." Nadia turned in his arms to face him. "This is what you warned me about. This is the world you live in. Then I'll leave it. I'll walk away from everything if it means keeping you safe." "You can't do that. Your people depend on you. Your family business. Everything you've built. None of it matters without you." Tae-hoon cupped her face in his hands. "Don't you understand? You're everything. The business, the power, the money. All of it means nothing if I lose you." Nadia kissed him, tasting salt from both their tears. "I'm not leaving you. I'm scared and I'm angry, but I'm not leaving." You should run from me as fast as you can." "But I won't." She kissed him again, deeper this time. "I choose you, Tae-hoon. I choose this life with you, all of it. The danger, the fear, everything, because I love you more than I'm scared." Something broke in Tae-hoon then. He kissed her desperately, pouring all his fear and relief and love into it. They made love right there in the bathtub, gentle at first because he was terrified of hurting her, then more urgent as they both needed to feel alive and connected. Later, in bed wrapped in clean sheets, Tahun held Nadia like she might disappear. I'm going to step back from the business. Not completely, but enough. I'm going to build us a safer life. What does that mean? It means we leave Miami, start fresh somewhere quieter. I keep my position, but let others handle the dangerous work. I focus on legitimate business and keeping you safe. He kissed her forehead. And it means I'm going to marry you, make you mine in every way possible. Nadia's heart skipped. Is that a proposal? Not yet. When I propose, it'll be perfect. Not after a nightmare like this. He tilted her face up to look at him. But I'm telling you my intentions. I want forever with you, Nadia. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. I want to make babies with you and watch you teach them to dance. I want everything. I want that too, she whispered. I want all of it with you. They made love again. Slower this time, both of them savouring every touch and kiss. It felt like a promise, like they were sealing their commitment to each other despite everything that had happened. Outside, the sun was rising on a new day. They had survived the worst test of their relationship, and somehow they had come out stronger on the other side. The moving truck pulled away from the mansion in Coral Gables, leaving Tahun and Nadia standing in the empty driveway. 3 months had passed since the warehouse. 3 months of Tahun systematically restructuring his entire life. Are you sure about this? Nadia asked, squeezing his hand. This was your home? No. Tahun turned to look at her, his eyes soft. You're my home. Everything else is just a place. They drove north for 2 days, taking their time, stopping at small towns along the coast. Tahun had his hands on the steering wheel, but his other hand never left Nadia's thigh, like he needed the constant reminder that she was there, safe beside him. Charleston, South Carolina welcomed them with warm southern air and the smell of the ocean. Their new house was smaller than the mansion. A beautiful 2-story home, painted white with blue shutters, sitting just a block from the beach. It had a porch swing and a yard with flowers, and when Nadia saw it, she cried happy tears. It's perfect, she whispered, walking through the empty rooms. It feels like a real home. That's because it will be. Tahun came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. No more hiding, no more looking over our shoulders every second, just us, building a life. Minjun had moved with them along with 2 other trusted guards, but they lived in a separate house nearby. Tahun had made it clear that his home with Nadia was sacred space. Business stayed outside those walls. He kept his promise about stepping back. He transferred most operations to his second-in-command in Miami and focused on legitimate investments, real estate, restaurants, import companies that actually imported legal goods. He still commanded respect in his old world, still took calls from people who needed his advice or approval, but the dangerous day-to-day operations were no longer his burden. I don't miss it, he told Nadia one morning while they drank coffee on their new porch. I thought I would, but I don't. This is better. What is? She was curled up in his lap, wearing one of his t-shirts and nothing else. Peace. Waking up without wondering who I'll have to threaten today. Coming home to you without blood on my hands. He kissed her neck, being able to just be a man in love instead of a boss everyone fears. Nadia found the perfect building for her dance school in downtown Charleston, an old warehouse with high ceilings and big windows that let in beautiful natural light. Tahun bought it without hesitation and hired contractors to renovate it exactly how she wanted. The day it opened, Nadia stood in the middle of the polished wooden floor and cried. The walls were painted in warm colours. Mirrors lined one side, and a sound system that cost more than her first car filled the space with music. A sign outside read, "Nadia's Dance Academy," in elegant letters. "Thank you," she said to Tahun, who was leaning against the doorway watching her, "for believing in my dream. I'd give you anything you wanted." He walked over and pulled her close. "Seeing you this happy makes everything worth it." Students started signing up immediately, children whose parents wanted them to learn discipline and grace, teenagers looking for an outlet, adults who had always dreamed of dancing but never had the chance. Nadia taught them all with patience and joy, and Tahun would sometimes stop by just to watch her work, amazed by how she could make people feel confident and beautiful with just her encouragement. 6 months into their new life, Tahun planned something special. He told Nadia to wear something nice and drove her to their favourite spot on the beach, a secluded area where they often walked at sunset. "Why are we here?" Nadia asked as they walked barefoot on the sand, the ocean waves rolling gently beside them. "Because this is where I fell in love with Charleston, right here, walking with you, watching you smile at the water." Tahun stopped and turned to face her. "And this is where I want to ask you something." Nadia's breath caught as he reached into his pocket. The setting sun painted everything gold and orange, and the ocean breeze played with her braids as Tahun dropped to one knee in the sand. "Nadia, from the moment I saw you dancing at that club, my entire world changed. You made me want to be better. You made me believe I could be more than what I was." He opened a small black box, revealing a diamond ring that caught the sunset and sparkled like fire. "You've survived my worst and loved me anyway. You've given me peace I never thought I could have. Will you marry me? Will you be mine forever?" Tears streamed down Nadia's face as she nodded, unable to speak. "Yes," she finally managed to whisper. "Yes, yes, yes." Tahun slid the ring onto her finger and stood, lifting her off the ground and spinning her around. She laughed and cried at the same time, kissing him while the ocean crashed behind them. When he finally put her down, he pressed his forehead against hers. "I'm going to spend every day making you happy," he promised. "I'm going to be the husband you deserve." "You already are," Nadia said, looking at the ring on her finger. It was perfect, elegant but not too flashy, exactly her style. "When did you buy this?" "The day we moved here. I've been carrying it around for 6 months, waiting for the perfect moment." He kissed her again, deeper this time. "I love you so much, it hurts sometimes." "I love you too. More than anything." They made love right there on the beach after the sun went down, hidden by the darkness and the sound of waves. It was passionate and desperate, both of them overwhelmed by the weight of their commitment to each other. Afterwards, they lay on Tahun's jacket, spread across the sand, looking up at the stars. "How many kids do you want?" Nadia asked, tracing patterns on his bare chest. "As many as you'll give me." He kissed the top of her head. "I want a house full of children who have your smile and your talent. I want to watch you teach them to dance in our living room. I want everything with you. Even the messy parts, the late nights and dirty diapers. Especially those parts. I want the whole beautiful mess of a life with you." They planned a small wedding for 2 months later, just close friends and the few family members they trusted. Nadia's mother flew in from Nigeria, and though she was hesitant about Tahun at first, he won her over by speaking to her in careful Igbo phrases he had learned just for her. "You make my daughter happy," her mother said to him the night before the wedding. "That's all I ever wanted for her. I'll spend my whole life making sure she stays happy." Tahun promised. "You have my word." The wedding took place on the beach at sunset, with an arch decorated in white flowers and blue fabric that moved in the ocean breeze. Nadia wore a simple white dress that hugged her curves and flowed around her legs. She had flowers in her braids and her mother's bracelet on her wrist. When Tahun saw her walking toward him, his eyes filled with tears. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, and she was choosing him. Despite everything, she was choosing him. They said their vows with the ocean as their witness. Tahun's voice shook when he promised to love and protect her for the rest of his life. Nadia cried when she promised to stand beside him through everything, good and bad. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant said with a smile. You may kiss your bride. Tahun cupped Nadia's face in his hands and kissed her softly, then deeper, as their small group of guests cheered. When they broke apart, both smiling so hard their faces hurt, he whispered against her lips, "My wife." "Finally." "My husband," Nadia whispered back. "Forever." The reception was intimate, just dinner at a beachside restaurant they had rented out. They danced to slow music, Nadia teaching Tahun new moves while everyone laughed and clapped. Minjun gave a toast that made everyone cry, talking about how he had watched his boss transform from a man who trusted no one into someone who loved completely. As the night ended, Tahun carried Nadia over the threshold of the beach house he had rented for their wedding night. It was beautiful, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean and a massive bed covered in rose petals. "This is too much," Nadia laughed, but she was smiling. "Nothing is too much for you." Tahun set her down gently and reached for the zipper of her dress. "Let me take care of my wife." He undressed her slowly, reverently, kissing every inch of skin he revealed. When she was bare before him, he just looked at her for a long moment. "What?" Nadia asked, feeling shy under his intense gaze. "I'm memorizing this moment, the night I married the love of my life." He kissed her deeply. "I never thought I could have this. A wife, a home, love. I thought I was too damaged, too dangerous for anything good. You're not damaged. You're perfect to me." Nadia pulled him down onto the bed. "Now, make love to your wife." They came together with passionate intensity, their bodies moving as one. It felt different now, sacred somehow, knowing they had made promises to each other in front of everyone they loved. Tahun whispered her new name against her skin, Mrs. Park, and Nadia said his name like a prayer. They made love 3 times that night, unable to get enough of each other. Between rounds, they lay tangled together and talked about their future, the children they would have, the dance recitals and school plays, the quiet mornings and the adventures they would take. "I want to grow old with you," Tahun said, playing with her wedding ring. "I want to sit on our porch when we're 80 and watch our grandchildren play in the yard." "We will," Nadia promised. "We survived everything to get here. Nothing's going to separate us now." The next 6 months passed in blissful peace. Nadia's dance school flourished, and Tahun's legitimate businesses grew successful. They fell into a comfortable rhythm of married life. He would wake her with kisses every morning, and she would dance in the kitchen while making breakfast. They took walks on the beach every evening, holding hands and talking about their days. One morning, Nadia woke up feeling sick. She barely made it to the bathroom before she was throwing up. Tahun held her hair back, worry creasing his forehead. "I'm calling the doctor," he said. "No, wait." Nadia looked up at him, realization dawning on her face. "I think I know what this is." 3 pregnancy tests later, they sat on their bathroom floor, staring at the positive results. Tahun's hands were shaking as he touched Nadia's still flat stomach. "We're having a baby," he whispered, his voice full of wonder. You're pregnant. We're having a baby, Nadia repeated, starting to cry happy tears. Are you happy? Happy? Tahun pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. I've never been happier in my entire life. You're giving me everything I never knew I needed. He kissed her stomach gently, reverently, and then kissed her lips. Thank you. Thank you for choosing me, for loving me, for giving me this life. Thank you for finding me, Nadia said, running her fingers through his hair, for not giving up on us. As her pregnancy progressed, Tahun became impossibly protective. He hired the best obstetrician in Charleston, baby-proofed their house months early, and read every parenting book he could find. Nadia teased him about being overprotective, but secretly she loved how much he cared. At night, he would talk to her growing belly in Korean and English, telling their baby stories about how he met their mother. Your mom is the bravest, most beautiful woman in the world, he would say softly, and I'm going to spend my whole life making sure both of you know how loved you are. On a quiet evening when Nadia was 7 months pregnant, they stood in their living room, swaying to soft music playing from the speakers. She rested her head on his chest and his arms wrapped around her carefully, one hand on her belly feeling their baby kick. We made it, Nadia whispered. Through everything, we made it here. We did. Tahun kissed the top of her head, feeling more content than he ever thought possible. And this is just the beginning. Outside, the ocean waves rolled steadily onto the shore. Inside, 2 people who had found each other in the chaos of Miami's nightlife danced slowly in their safe, peaceful home. They had survived danger, fear, and uncertainty. They had chosen love over logic and built something beautiful from the wreckage of Tahun's old life. Nadia felt their baby kick against Tahun's hand, and they both smiled. Soon, they would be 3, then maybe more. They would fill this house with laughter and love and dance lessons in the living room. I love you, Tahun said, his voice thick with emotion. More than I ever thought I could love anyone. I love you too, Nadia replied, tilting her face up to kiss him. Forever, forever, he agreed, holding his wife and their unborn child close. This is our forever, and it's just beginning. The music played on, and they kept dancing. 2 souls who had found their home in each other's arms. The dangerous man from Miami was gone, replaced by a husband and soon-to-be father who had learned that the greatest power wasn't control or fear, but love. And in that moment, swaying together in their living room, with the future growing inside Nadia, they both knew they had found exactly what they were always meant to find, each other. And here ends the story of Nadia and Tahun. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, subscribe. Tell us where you're watching from in the comment section. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.